Here on NC Votes, we're with Dominic Fonte. He's the Ward 4 council person and unique amongst this race for all the council people because you were appointed and now you want a full term of your own, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you've been there, what, about a year?
A little over a year.
Okay, why do you want to serve another term? With just 1 year under your belt, have you had enough or are you ready to move forward?
Well, I can see it's a challenge. You know, it's hard to find good people that want to run for the position of Ward 4 council, but I believe that you know, I'm pretty down to earth. I pretty much have a good standing and understanding of what the people want, and I want to give back to my community. So I think I'd like an opportunity to go ahead and go for another term and see if I can make somewhat of a difference.
Okay, what are your qualifications you bring to the table? Obviously you were appointed, so somebody saw those qualifications and now you're presenting them to the voters for re-election. So what are those qualifications? What's in your background that would make you a good ward council person to continue?
Well, yeah, I live in the community, obviously. I've been in Ward 4 for over 20 years. I work in the community. I've been married to my wife, Julie, for 20 years. We have 5 children, and the kids have all gone through the school system, and we're very familiar with the community. 3 of them graduated. 2 are starting their families, and I have 1 that'll attend college here in the fall, or winter season. And I have 1 that's a junior at Hoover High School, and I have 1 that's a freshman. And I believe that I understand what the people of our community are concerned about. This is a great community where I've worked for 27 years in the real estate industry, and I built my reputation based on trust, respect, results, and hard work. And I believe those qualifications should help me to convey the messages of our constituents to make sure that I'm serving them well. So I'm a servant of the community, and I believe I'd be a great person to continue on and work for Ward 4.
And each one of the wards has its own unique situations, positives and negatives. So what are some of the big issues that Ward 4 is facing? If I'm a Ward 4 voter and I'm watching you, how do you connect with them? What are those big issues you hear about and that you know about?
Well, I mean, I've been in it for 1 year, so there's a bit of a learning curve. I just say right now in Ward 4, one of the big issues that we've struggled with is the Zimber Ditch, and the Zimber Ditch is where it backs along the Price Park amenity that we have, and there's some flooding there. So we've been having this for many, many years, and we were able to secure a grant, and we were able to offer a buyout to some of the residents, actually 10 or 11 residents, and 5 of those were able to get an appraisal acceptable to them, and 5 of the houses were demoed, and we have now parklands. The other 5 houses, we have 3 that are going to be demoed in October this year. So we're starting to clear that out to allow for more overflow, and that's a big issue. And we just had a measuring device put at the Zimber Ditch measuring device to monitor the flooding from north to south, so we can put a master plan together to eliminate this problem once and for all. The other issue, I believe, is safety. We want to continue to have safe streets and feel safe so we have a good place to raise our children and work and play. The streets, obviously, blacktopping is a big issue. I'm in charge of streets and alleys, and this year, once I understood what I'm supposed to be doing, I got all over the streets and alleys, and the drain grates, if you notice, some of our drainage systems are deteriorating, so I'm very cognizant of that throughout the city as well as our ward, so I'm watching that very closely. And so I think for the basics, those are the items that I believe that we have to address, and also try to get some more jobs in our community so we have less burden on the citizens for the taxes.
How do you, as a ward council person, with a finite amount of money to spend, particularly with streets and alley chair, how do you balance the needs of your ward, which obviously is close to your heart, versus the other 4 wards in the city as a whole? How do you handle that?
Well, I work in the community, so I'm all over the city looking at the streets and alleys and grates. And what I do basically is I go to the engineer and find out what we have allocated. They have a schedule of streets that they have typically that we do, but then I go around with a notepad and I go up and down every street and I look at all the drain grates, I look at all the streets, and I put them on a list and I push them. I try to push my agenda for Ward 4 to make sure that those streets get addressed. And I was able to get 13 streets done this year, and we spent probably about $2.2 million on the street 14 and 15 paving. I came in late in the game, so the street paving didn't happen last year, so I made sure we got an early start this year on it, staying on top of it with the engineer, because it takes a little bit of time to do that. One of the frustrations I had is when these streets get blacktopped, it seems like they only last 1 or 2 years. When I Googled it, they should last 13 or 14 years. So I was upset that I didn't think we were getting a good job done, and I wanted to see if we could have an expert come in and describe to us why this is not happening correctly. And he explained that, you know, a lot of the foundations of the roads need replaced, so we're just basically skimming the tops and resealing them with an inch or inch and a half of blacktop, and the binding that we're using doesn't hold up to the cold temperatures we've had over the last 2 years. Okay. So that's why they're popping and breaking. So we have to work a little harder on generating more revenue, and we do get a little bit of money from the sewer and streets, and then one of the items that, as we replace the utilities, sometimes we can use funds from the utilities. If they have to tear up the road to put new utilities in, you know, we can share the burden with the other utilities, like water and sewer.
All of the incumbents are going to be asked what their primary accomplishment or what they feel has been in the last 2 years. It's a little unfair to you because you've only been there a year, but in a year, other than what you've already talked about, what would you think is your major accomplishment?
I would just say focusing on the Zimmer ditch, fixing that issue. After 20-some years, we were able to now secure some funding with the help of Kurt Schuring, and just communicating with the residents. It seems like, you know, it seems like there's a little breakdown between the residents and city government, just the communication. And I believe that what I really would like to bring to the table is better communication. So in late October, I'm going to roll out a YouTube channel, Dominic Fonte, Ward 4 Councilman, and I'm going to be talking about the improvements around our ward and what's happening around the ward, as well as the city and what the Hoover District, because I believe that as a real estate expert in the vicinity, people expect me to know more as well as a councilman. So I believe that now that I understand the inner workings, the inner workings of the government, I want to go ahead and make sure I can expose that to the citizens so I can get more information in their hands as quick as possible by the technology route. Okay.
We've got a couple of minutes left. I'll try to make a very fast question to give you a lot of time to answer. And you talked about communication, you talked about with the residents. Last couple of years, and you can't deny it, there's been a substantial amount of press coverage for the city. Some of it positive, some of it negative. When you get into lawsuits, you get into citizen participation, you get into some zoning problems. Now, as part of the current council, how do you think the situation has developed? And if you do get reelected, how are you going to calm these waters? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there's always legal and practical, and as far as from city government, you know, we have a law director, Mr. Fox, and what we'll do is try to make sure we're doing everything legally correct. Now, sometimes there's practical, so there's always legal and practical. So sometimes you have to do the practical thing. For example, you know, like with the voters and healthcare, when that happened, I wasn't involved in it, so I don't know all the inner workings, but I mean, legally, it was put on the ballot based on what they thought was correct. And as citizens, you know, we voted what we believed to be correct, which was 72.5% said they didn't want health care. And, you know, so legally it wasn't put on properly, but practically, you know, the citizens really didn't want to pay for health care. Right. I understand that. So, you know, I would just say use common sense. You know, you look at the legal side of things, make sure we're keeping the city out of trouble, but there's also a practical side. So I believe as a councilman, you know, I bring a fresh approach to council and use good common sense so we make informed decisions. And it's not always the most popular decision, but we're humans and we do make mistakes. But overall, I would just say, you know, everybody cares, but people show it in different ways. I sometimes tease some of the people that, you know, are more dramatic about what they're concerned about, but that's their passion. Mm-hmm. And so I think of it as like a beekeeper. You know, you have a beekeeper with smoke to smoke the bees out, and some people poke the bees out. But either way, the bees come out. Just sometimes they're, you know, zipping around in the repository and the other press sometimes tend to, you know, sell papers. So if it bleeds, it leads. And I think that's really what's happening. But overall, I believe the council, their hearts are in the right place. There's a little miscommunication, which I'm hoping that I can make a difference.
Well, good luck in November, and we look forward to talking with you again here.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.